My name's Andrew, Andrew Doust. I'm an elder here at Fellowship, and I came to Dubai for 3 years, and that was 13 years ago. Anybody had that experience? Yeah, it kind of gets under your skin, doesn't it? You stay. Well, I came for a job, to work in business. That was my main reason for coming, to earn some money to see the world. That was the reason I came. But it's not the reason I'm here. And it's only in recent years I've come to appreciate why I'm here. And part of that reason, I think, is articulated so beautifully in this book by Andrew Thompson, a book on the history of Christianity in the UAE. And in it, he talks about bridge builders. And he talks about how Christians over the years in the UAE have helped build bridges so people could understand Jesus. And I've realized, actually, that's why I'm here. I came for a job. I'm here for a greater purpose, to build bridges and to serve this wonderful country and the people in it. We've just seen an extraordinary example of that, haven't we, in Oasis Hospital. And we have some more extraordinary examples that are about to join me on stage now. Would you welcome our panelists, please, as we get into our session? Thank you. I'm delighted to welcome Carl Rubish, Stan Rubish, Timothy, who you saw on the video, and also Yusuf. Please take a seat, won't you? Actually, I might sit there if you don't mind. Thank you. Great. I'm honoured, really, to be sharing this session with such extraordinary people who each of them have their own story to tell of how they have blessed and served this incredible nation of ours. You've heard a little bit about Tim, so I won't start with Tim. I'm going to start here with Carol. I should say that Carol and Stan have so many hats they wear. I couldn't list them all and still have time for other questions. In fact, each of these panelists have so many hats. So I'll only say that they're all involved in ministry. They're all involved in having served this country of ours over many, many years. So Carol, when you first came, you were somewhat reluctant, weren't you, when you came to when you came from Sri Lanka. What's God done that's changed your mind about why you should be here?
It is so true that, I don't know that this is, yeah. It was so very true. I was reluctant. I only came here because my husband Stan was invited to be the pastor of the evangelical church. And I felt I went to stay in Sri Lanka. We lived there for 15 years, and I thought that's where we would always be. But God has plans, and he wants us to follow his plans. And I came here fighting. I did not want to come to this country. But God spoke to me through his word like he often does. And he said, lean not in your own understanding. Trust in me, and I am going to direct your path. And I thought, okay, I'm going to trust God. And it's been amazing because so many opportunities have opened up to get to know Emirati women, Emirati families, and families from all over the world. This country has been so wonderful to bring the nations here and allow us to meet people from all over. So I'll always be thankful for that opportunity.
You were volunteering at the Oasis Hospital as a midwife. What sort of opportunities did that give you to serve people well?
I was volunteering there, and I actually made a prenatal book that was used in educating moms and dads as they prepared for the birth of their baby. And I had over 300 families that have gone through those classes through the 17 years that I worked at Oasis. And it was a privilege because God is the one who creates these children. And we could pray for these families, thanking God for the gift that he had given, praying for them when they were actually in labor, being with them and helping them through, and seeing God present them with their precious babies. What a neat way to identify and be a part. It was marvelous. And then I still have met people that way back, those years before, we've been here 27 years now, way back in those early years, I still meet somebody that I don't recognize, and they'll say, oh, I'd like you to meet my daughter. She's the one you prayed for, and she's the one that you helped deliver. Praise God for what he does.
I know you tell an interesting story about a lady you met in having your nails done a few years ago who reminded you that you delivered her daughter. Is that correct?
That's right. I just met her. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Yusuf, you first came to the UAE 41 years ago. which you must have been about 5 years old at the time, I reckon. Um, but you came, unlike others perhaps, not as a pastor, but as a worker in the oil sector. But actually, over the years, you've seen something more of what God has in store for you to do here. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Thank you. Yes, I was working in the UN in the Middle East, and I had a very good job. And then, as usual, God comes and disturbs you. And God was saying, I want to take you to the desert. Didn't know what that means. I thought the west part of Egypt, but no. God moved me in his sovereignty to come to this place. When I first came, I came for interview the 30th of June, and you know how the weather is beautiful at the time. So I went in, and at 7 o'clock in the morning, I had that heat wave coming from, as I stepped out from the airplane, and I felt God in his sovereignty speak to me and say, this is the desert I called you to be in. And so I knew I got the job even before the 7 days interview that killed me for a whole 7 days. But I felt that I didn't know what I'm coming here to do, but I knew that it was a call of God, and so it made it easy for me to change from a successful career to a career that I do not know. I spent 2 years in Dubai, enjoying it very much, and trying to find how to communicate with the national precious people I only heard about. I never met one Emirati for the first 3 months, not one, except the CEO in Al Futtaim where I was working. So I found out that I'm missing so much. After that, I started to come and enjoy and be blessed by knowing nationals that started to make my existence here really meaningful, because they are precious people to know. They are precious people in the eyes of God, that what he taught me is to share with them. And when I moved to Abu Dhabi as an executive in the oil industry, I had more people to meet, more dignitaries to understand and appreciate and respect and learn from. And I found out that God brought me here to learn and to share and to be blessed.
We have a long history of Christians who have blessed and served this nation. You shared with me the other day about one lady predating actually Oasis. Can you tell us about Amal Budi?
Amal Budi came here many years ago. I cannot even trace, she doesn't even remember now. But she came and pitched her tent in a very small and unknown place in the UAE. All she wanted to do as a young Syrian midwife is to help the women here, because they needed somebody that can relate to them, that comes from a background that is similar. And she could not have enough time to help the women and deliver in her torn tent. I looked at that and I said, how can this be a hospital? It's just a worn tent. And yet, the number of people that she met, the number of ladies that came to her before the wonderful Oasis and other hospitals came to being was amazing. And they came to her sometimes even after the other hospitals were erected, because she did not give the medical help, but she gave more the relationship and the care and encouragement. And they come and ask her to pray for them and for the children. And they bring later on the children as they grow up to come to see Mama Amal that brought them to life. It was amazing to see how a dedicated young woman that became now in her 80s maybe, doing all this and lovely. And I met her a year ago, and she was so vibrant still at her old age and ready to do whatever she can to bless the nation by her love for the people and ability to live a very simple life to bring life to other people.
Thank you. Tim, we heard your story or at least the story of Oasis. What about you? What brought you here? What drew you to this country?
I think a number of things, but really it was kind of the opportunity to meet people from all over the world was really impressive. Just the opportunity to kind of connect, to hear stories, if we have the opportunity at the time, even to hear them, within the clinic. But just to hear how God had brought them from different places here, to work, to live, to know each other. And then really just the opportunities at Oasis that we could sincerely and honestly love people and just kind of look out for their needs rather than the needs of ourselves.
So when you think about the example of Christians, those who love Jesus, who have gone before us, what do you think has characterized their approach that has commended them to this nation and to the people they served?
Just in thinking of that, I was very encouraged to recently read an article or an editorial in the Khalij Times where that really recognized the efforts of Dr. Pat and Marion Kennedy and just how that they truly loved others and how that was recognized and just the hospitality to which they were welcomed into the community of Al-Ain. So in an op-ed piece discussing why the UAE had invited the Pope to the Arabian Peninsula, the UAE ambassador to the U.S., Yusuf Ateba, had wrote, and I'll just read from the beginning and the final paragraph, but he said, in 1960, 2 American missionary doctors went deep into the harsh desert of the Arabian Peninsula to set up a hospital in a mud-block building with dirt floors and a palm frond roof. For the Bedouins who lived there and practiced Islam, it would be their first experience with modern medicine and their first contact with Christianity. Over the next few years, with the encouragement and support from local tribal leaders, the husband and wife medical team would grow the hospital, save many lives, and cement a lasting legacy of respect and admiration between Christians and Muslims in what later would become the United Arab Emirates. And then Yusuf finishes with, 60 years ago, deep in the desert, missionary doctors and Bedouin villagers built a bridge between two faiths with acts of kindness and understanding. And it's really just a privilege to be a part of a community with such a rich history of self-sacrificing love. The Kennedys and the early medical staff from India, from Pakistan, from Syria, Egypt, Lebanon, just a very eclectic group of people that God had brought together, simply wanted to serve God, honor God by serving others. And they wanted to reflect the love of Jesus Christ, who did not come to be served, but to serve. And really just from that, it's just a beautiful opportunity, I think, to just display that on a day in and day out basis. And to really be connected with the community and to provide for their needs as they have provided for us, ours, through so many years.
Stan, I think sometimes we feel like it's what we say that matters, and that's what people hear, but actually it's how we live that people see, and the impact we've just heard a little about here. Can you tell us a bit more about the stories of those whose lives have impacted others and how they've lived and how Jesus has inspired them to live that way?
Surely, yeah.
That's on. Yeah. You're right.
Sister Carol and I came from Sri Lanka after 15 years of service there, but I had a history with South Asia ever since I was born, because I was born in India, raised in Sri Lanka, so I have a natural affinity towards South Asians. And you find me in any group of people, I would probably gravitate to those that I can recognize from an Indian or subcontinent background, and I will try to greet them with in something of their own language. And that just opens the door to a relationship, the beginning of a communication with them. And so when we came, first of all, I would say from the Al-Ain Church Center, where we come from, I want to just express our deep gratitude, appreciation for the spirit of tolerance that pervades this nation, that allows us as Christians to worship and to express our faith in freedom in this country. Second of all, you mentioned extraordinary people. We are ordinary people that God is using in extraordinary ways, just amazing. And so, because of my affinity with the South Asian subcontinent, I have developed my own personal purpose statement. It goes something like this, that we want to prepare people here for ministry there, prepare people now for ministry in their home countries. And that's kind of been the emphasis of our ministry. And I've kind of identified that with 3 T's. One is touching, meaning that compassionate building a relationship through authentic relationships. That opens the door for telling the good news of the gospel, and then training people in Christian ministry in the context of a local church. Now that is illustrated by our Sri Lankan pastor, one of the 2 churches that we have helped to initiate and start. And he came from a strong Buddhist background in a very strong Buddhist area in Sri Lanka. Came to work with a company here and a good job. And through his exposure to Sri Lankan Christians and with us, he came to know the Lord. And we were able to disciple him. And then now he is the leader of our Sri Lankan congregation. And so he has prepared himself through this ministry to be able to go back to his homeland. In fact, it was such a thrill a couple years ago when he went back on vacation. He said, I got to preach in my homeland for the first time. It was amazing. And so this is kind of the direction of our ministry here. Training people here for ministry back in their homelands, preparing them for effective ministry, especially in the context of congregational life.
It sounds like you're reminding people their real job. If we are followers of Jesus, it's not the job we do to earn money. It's another job that God calls us to, and it's great to hear you preparing people for that. Carol, you mentioned the White Hearts and the people from Oasis Hospital were known as people of white heart. What do they mean by that? Can you explain that for us?
It's really interesting. The first time I heard it, I wondered too, but what it's all about is they would go into the hospital and they would sense a peace. There was something different. And as the nurses cared for them and the doctors cared for them, it was like they have white hearts. They really want to treat us. They're compassionate. They care for us. They really look to caring for us, not just earning money as a doctor or a nurse. And it's just amazing to have that reputation. But that's what all of us in this room who have that relationship with God, I pray that when we meet people from all nationalities, they will realize it's not just about us. It's about a relationship with God, and He makes the difference. He puts the words in our mouth to even speak. He orchestrates our path. I liked what you said. There's no just coincidence. I don't believe in coincidence. I believe in God-orchestrated interactions with people to be in the right place at the right time to meet a need that's there. And if I could add one more quick thing, that is, well, how do you really talk with anybody from another nationality? Well, if you can speak English, you can. But first of all, look them in the eye. Get to understand what struggles are they going through. What are the hard times they're facing? And don't just leave it there and walk away. Don't just say, I'll pray for you, and walk away. I learned the lesson the hard way, but 10 years ago it began to change because I will see people, I will listen, I will hear what their needs are, and then I will say, I have a personal relationship with God, and He says that we should ask Him when we have a need. Would you like me to pray for you and ask God to meet that need you're facing? And you know what? Typical question is, do you know how to pray? And I say, I will pray in the way I have been taught to pray. Is that okay with you? And I've never, ever, in the 27 years we've been here, had anyone say, no, I don't want you to pray. Oftentimes, I heard when I first came here that men of your faith, of the people of this country, felt Christians do not pray. They have every right to kind of think that. We don't go to the mosque and pray 5 times a day, but we pray all the time, at any time. But they respect. I work in an institute now. I just retired from there, but it's run by totally Islamic people, Muslim people. And we had a conference one time, and I shared some things and shared the differences to how we pray all the time. And may we have permission to pray when we're at work and we're facing some problem. And he said, of course you may. He followed me out of the room. And the owner of the company said, I want you to know, we respect people who pray. So I guess my challenge to all of us sitting in this room, why do we not pray? Why do we not pray when we see people who are in real need? It's a bridge. I have so many people of this faith, people of other faiths who will call and say, I'm having this problem, can you pray? Because I know God hears and answers your prayer, and he does.
Wow, that's powerful. Thank you. Yeah. Yusuf, you came initially to do a sort of secular job, as did I. Maybe you came with more pure motives than me. I think I came really for the idea of the job and what I could get from it. And I feel like maybe more people like me, more followers of Jesus, have come with that reason in mind. We came here to kind of rent the country for a while, get from what we could, and then leave. It feels like we've lost something in that service heart that many others and each of you have expressed. Something that is deep in God's heart to serve others wherever we are. Is that your sense? And how do we recover that sense of service and being here for a purpose that is not primarily about my day job, but about commending Jesus by the way we love others?
Well, I think that we live who we are. We learn from the teaching of Jesus that we should be light and salt. It's a big understanding of light bringing the truth in love to everybody, and salt to help the world have a better taste and also stay away from corruption. And I think that is a calling for everybody. It's not for clergy or for lay people, everybody. And I had the privilege of experiencing both. And when I was an executive, I felt God is moving me every day, and I brought my faith with respect to my workplace. And when I was called by God to leave everything and move into being a pastor, I did that, and I never give away my understanding of how the world works. And so I can relate, I think, better to the people that are struggling in the workplace, in the family. And that gave me a great privilege and ability to work with the community. So as I move on, it happened to be that when I became a pastor here and came back to pastor the Arabic church, and then later on, I became the chairman of the board of trustees for all the evangelical churches in Abu Dhabi, and that gave me a great privilege and ability to relate to the government offices with all respect and humility. I work with the CDC now, and Mr. Saleh is a great gift you gave us in Abu Dhabi. We're working with him starting this last week, and we appreciate very much what you are doing. And what caught my eyes was when he said, we want you to be stakeholders with us, meaning that both of us will work together. I would like also to give hand to this. And that is a great understanding. Believe me, and I'm not saying that to compliment people, but I feel that the government in UAE have a great understanding of how we bring the two worlds together for the goodness of everybody and for the fulfillment of the will of God, for the kingdom of God to be established everywhere. Because this is what it's all about. I meet very regularly with the government officials in the Ministry of Tolerance and in the Ministry of Justice. They invited the church to be an extension to the judicial system to help the non-Muslims in their problems, and they give us authority, they give us all what we need to make things happen. Before any couple goes to court, they come to the church first, trying to bring them some alternative solution, as they call it, and we are very much privileged to help people to solve the problems before they go to court and separate. And that is what we are all about. So answering your question, I think it's extremely important that each one of us here in this place and in our churches, that we know that as churches, we as believers of Jesus Christ and followers, we need to be proactive, helping people, blessing the nation, and bringing things together, because he is the Prince of Peace, and he is inviting us to be peacemakers.
Wonderful, yeah. We're almost out of time, but I just have two final questions. And Stan, if we, as believers, 300 or 400 people in the room, if we started thinking that way, ourselves as peacemakers, as ambassadors of Jesus, and started serving others that way, what do you imagine the impact might be on this nation, on our neighbors, and on our workplaces? Give us a sense of that.
I think you hit on the key word. The word from 2 Corinthians is the word ambassador. And we know that the ambassador represents a kingdom or country from which he comes. We come from the kingdom of God. And so we represent him both by deed and by word. And if we would all recognize our position, our status as ambassadors of Jesus Christ to the people of this land, both by our actions, our concern, compassion for people, as has been mentioned, our building of authentic relationships with them, and also the word of testimony of the gospel. It must go out as well. And we can all do that in the vocations, in the jobs, in the marketplace, in the schools, wherever we are. We can be an ambassador for Jesus Christ.
Yeah, wonderful. And I thank you. I want to finish a question with Tim, because the story you tell of the blood transfusion, I think, is such a good one that captures this idea of sacrifice, not just us to our friends, but Jesus to us as well.
No, absolutely. I found inspiration in a particular story that I believe really does demonstrate what it means to truly love your neighbor. Back in the early 1960s, there was a young lady who, after giving birth to a healthy child, had significant postpartum bleeding. And it was difficult, and very difficult to control, and very difficult to identify the source of the bleeding. Through the night, they called Dr. Marion in to kind of assist her. And so they were working feverishly to, just to kind of stabilize her hemodynamic status. And began giving IV fluids, and began searching and trying to determine different maneuvers to try to determine the cause of the bleeding. As the evening wore on, it became apparent that the young patient needed a blood transfusion. And so they determined the type of blood that she had, and then they consulted the blood bank, which at those days and in hospitals similar throughout the world really consisted of a piece of paper on the wall of labor and delivery and of the operating room that had a list of the hospital staff and then their blood types. And so they determined exactly the type for this young patient, and so then they called an engineer, and he came and gave a pint of blood. Then they called one of the lab technicians, and they came and gave a pint of blood that could be used for her. And she began to improve, but throughout the night, she wasn't quite as stable as they were hoping, and they realized that they needed at least one more pint of blood. And when they looked again at the list, they realized that the one person that matched this patient was Dr. Marion herself. And so Dr. Marion stopped and suspended her medical efforts, rolled up her sleeve, and provided another pint of blood for this patient. And then immediately after that, scrubbed back in and tried to assist in whatever she needed to finally stabilize. And by God's grace, she did great and survived the evening and went on to continue with a healthy life. But I think it was just a very perfect, beautiful example of tangible demonstration of Christ's love. When he says, "Love as I have loved you." Because when they came, certainly it was their goal and their hope to share their experiences, their skill, their all of the education that they had. But not only that, they came to share their lives as well. And I think that just incredibly reflects what Christ has done for us.
Well, thank you so much. You know, as I've heard your stories and I've prepared for this session, I've just been so struck by people who came here, not for a job. The job may have brought them here, but their purpose in being here was to build a bridge so people might come to know and understand Jesus. And as I think about my own expat experience here and the shift from mindset of being a renter of the country, I think, what role should I think about? And I think much more about being a gardener. A gardener plants, tends the garden, and watches things grow, but often doesn't get to see the fully grown trees. That comes and is a benefit for others to follow. So perhaps if we all start thinking of gardeners in relation to the role God's placed us here to do, what a difference that could make. I want to thank each of our panel members for their wonderful service and for their insightful comments. Thank you.